Chapter 1. Blood and Brotherhood. The air in the back alley of Kowloon was thick with the scent of opium smoke and sweat, the kind of stench that clung to the skin long after you left. It was 1932, and the neon glow of the city's underbelly flickered against the damp stone walls, casting long shadows where secrets festered. Lau Fook moved through the crowd like a ghost, his presence both feared and revered. He didn't need to speak, his reputation did the talking. The Triad's grip on Hong Kong's black market was tightening, and Lau was the one pulling the strings. He had started small, just another street rat with a knife and a hunger for power. But ambition had a way of growing in the cracks of a city built on corruption. The British colonial government turned a blind eye to the opium trade as long as the profits lined the right pockets. And Lau, he knew how to make sure those pockets were his. The first rule of the Triad was loyalty. The second was profit. Lau had mastered both. That night in a dimly lit opium den, he met with his most trusted lieutenants. The room was heavy with the weight of unspoken deals, the kind that could get a man killed if the wrong person overheard. A single lantern cast flickering light over the faces of men who had sworn their lives to him. One of them, a wiry man with a scar running down his cheek, leaned in. Lau, the British are getting nervous. They are tightening the ports. Lau exhaled, a slow stream of smoke, his fingers tracing the rim of his teacup. Let them. We don't need their ports. The other men exchanged glances. They knew what that meant. The Triad was expanding, branching out into new territories, new schemes. Opium was just the beginning. Lau had bigger plant splints that didn't involve getting caught. What about the banks? Another man asked. They are watching the money. Lau's lips curled into a smile. Then we make them watch something else. The room fell silent. The Triad had always been about muscle and intimidation, but Lau was thinking bigger. He was thinking about the kind of power that didn't come from a gun but from a ledger that could be rewritten. Outside, the distant wail of a police siren cut through the night. The men tensed, but Lau didn't flinch. He knew the rules of the game. The police were just another player, one that could be bought or ignored. Brotherhood, he said, his voice low. That's what keeps us strong. But brotherhood alone won't build an empire. The men nodded. They understood. The Triad was more than just a gang. It was a family, and families had to eat. The next morning, Lau stood on the docks, watching as crates of opium were unloaded under the cover of dawn. The workers moved quickly, their faces blank, their hands steady. They knew better than to ask questions. The Triad's reach extended far beyond these wharves into the heart of Hong Kong's financial district. Lau had spent years cultivating relationships with bankers, officials, even a few well-placed inspectors. Money had a way of loosening tongues and tightening loyalties. He adjusted his suit jacket, the fabric crisp against his skin. He had traded his street clothes for something more respectable, something that belonged in a boardroom rather than a back alley. The transformation was deliberate. Lau wasn't just a gangster anymore. He was a businessman. A man in a tailored suit approached, his shoes clicking against the wooden planks. Mr. Lau, he said, extending a hand. This shipment is secure. Lau shook it, his grip firm. Good. And the ledgers? The man hesitated. The usual adjustments have been made. Lau nodded. The ledgers were the key. Every crate of opium that came through these docks had a paper trail, one that led to shell companies, to offshore accounts, to names that couldn't be traced back to the Triad. It was a delicate dance, one that required precision. One wrong move, and the whole house of cards could come crashing down. But Lau wasn't worried. He had spent years perfecting the art of deception. The banks trusted him. The officials trusted him. And the people, who should have been watching, they were too busy counting their cuts to ask questions. By midday, Lau was in the heart of the city, walking past the grand facades of banks and trading houses. The air smelled of ink and ambition, a far cry from the opium dens of Kowloon. Here, the deals were made with handshakes and contracts, not knives and threats. But the stakes were just as high. He stepped into a quiet office, the kind where men in suits spoke in hushed tones about investments and returns. A banker, a man with silver hair and a gold watch, looked up from his desk. Mr. Lau, he said, his voice smooth. I trust your business is prospering. Lau took a seat, his posture relaxed. Very much so. And yours? The banker smiled. We're always looking for new opportunities. Lau leaned forward. Then I have one for you. The banker's eyes gleamed. He knew what this was about. The Triad had been laundering money through his institution for years, a quiet arrangement that kept both sides happy. But now Lau was proposing something bigger. We need to expand, Lau said. More accounts, more shell companies. The usual discretion, of course. The banker nodded. Of course. We understand the importance of privacy. Lau stood straightening his jacket. Good. I'll have my men bring you the details. As he left the office, the weight of the city pressed in around him. Hong Kong was a place of contradictions, beauty and decay, wealth and poverty, order and chaos. And Lau was the man pulling the strings, weaving his web of influence through every layer of society. But even as he walked through the crowded streets, he knew the truth. The Triad's power was built on blood and brotherhood, but it was sustained by something far more dangerous, money. And money, as Lau well knew, had a way of turning even the most loyal brothers into enemies. The next chapter will reveal how Lau's empire began to crack as whispers of betrayal spread through the Triad's ranks. The banks were getting nervous. The British were getting suspicious. And Lau, he was playing, a game that even he might not be able to win. But for now, the city hummed with the sound of opportunity, and Lau Fook was at the center of it all. The Opium King had risen. The question was, so far would he fall?